you, as an angler, you're put into situations. And in tennis and golf are muscle memory sports. So you teach your body to make those swings with the racket or the club and muscle memory. So as an angler, you're put into situations, and if you can utilize those in the future from the past, you build on your strengths. And I used to catch a lot of fish on a black spinnerbait. But the cool thing was with that skirt, it was black, purple, green, and brown. Yeah. I saw a brim swimming down the bank, and I'm like, well, son of a gun, I've got some skirts like that. And what's funny is the skirts came from one of my marshals, Miss Elizabeth Moree from Mississippi. And she says, I want to give you some of these cool skirts that a friend of mine puts on his jigs. And I pulled that out, put it on that black spinnerbait, and I blast them. Now, I caught them good at the Kentucky Lake event last year. The first day I caught a limit of fish in a very difficult tournament on a black spinnerbait. So maybe we ought to go back a little bit in time and fish some of these old baits that were productive. I don't know.
It really seems like the spinnerbait is making a comeback.
Huge. It's making a huge.
Maybe it never went away.
It didn't go away. It didn't go away. People just.
Do you guys think that those bass are going to not hit the spinnerbait?
No, they're too smart now. No, they got social media. They don't hit spinnerbaits. What's wrong with you?
But everybody's throwing a vibrating jig anymore, which is a great bait. And I want to do something a little bit different. And that spinner bug has put a ton of money in my pocket in the last 3 years.
And when I saw you throwing that bait, I mean, it's pretty much a lot of people know that maybe one of the best brim imitating colors is that black, purple with the green, and the brown.
It looks just like them.
It
looks just like them.
Everybody thinks you have to have the green pumpkin with the blue and the orange throat part of the skirt, right? But
yeah,
that's
they don't all look like that.
That is true, man. Hey, so that's to me, I call that a tuck away. That bait, that skirt, that's a tuck away.
Huh.
Yeah. Dude.
Well, my girlfriend is she's an exercise instructor, and it's tuck and hold in her business.
Tuck and hold. All right, well, that's perfect. Let's call it the tuck and hold. The tuck and hold.
Yeah.
Now, we all have some tuck and holds in our tackle boxes. You know what I'm saying? We keep them stashed away. You gave an example of that skirt right there, but give me an example of some classics that are in your tackle box.
My tackle box.
Yeah, you just bring out, you tuck them away for that special situation. What do you got
there? Golly, I've got so many. You should see my tackle box. There's so much crap in it.
I'm sure it's crazy.
I'm a big fan of getting baits painted, and I came out with a group of baits from Strike King, Mark Menendez Color Series. That's through a distributor here in Kentucky, and one of them we call Moongill, and
that's our producer's favorite.
For 25 years, it's been in my tackle box, and I gave that one up. And that's one that I've had painted in lots of different styles of baits, square bills, Series 3s, Series 5s, even 6XDs. That's a tuck away right there. I'm trying to think of something else that's really cool that I've got a lot. How many of you guys have got old tackle boxes that smell like old dirty socks?
I love it.
Butyrate made plastic baits. And I have tons of those, everything from jerk baits to deep diving plugs to big square bills, all of it. I mean, butyrate is a better material for bass fishing. I mean, it just is a better deal. But I don't know. I've got some old plastic worms that are probably 25 or 30 years old, and I'll get a couple of those out every now and then. And Mr. Twisters used to make a deal called a centipede that was my favorite as a kid.
Oh, heck yeah. I remember
that's kind of a cool one that I'll pull out sometimes.
How about the Mark Menendez suspending rogue jerkbait?
Well, if you scratch the name off of that, they catch a hell of a lot more fish. But that's there's some of those that are awful good, that are awful favorites of mine. So yeah, I'm a complete collector. I'm obsessed with it. I mean, when's the last time you caught one on a Little George?
Yeah, like since I was 12, maybe.
Yeah. Well, that thing still catches fish too. So it's really neat to go back and find those old things that work. And for me, knowing how to work those older baits, I feel like it can give me a little bit of an advantage, if nothing else, more confidence, because I know ain't nobody else in the whole darn bunch has got one of them. So
exactly, I guarantee if you tie on a Bagley Honeybee 3 or just a little honeybee, not a balsa bee 3, but a honeybee, there ain't nobody throwing a honeybee, buddy. You know,
especially in a rainbow trout color. And I've got 3 or 4 of those. Boy,
look at him! Look at him! I'll bet. Do you have the pumpkin seed True Life edition?
No, I don't have any of those left. They didn't survive.
Those are worth about $900 in a honeybee if you have those.
In the pumpkin seed. I'll have to go look.
In the True Life series pumpkin seed. In fact, if you have any Bagleys in the True Life pumpkin seed color, you're in business, Mr. Menendez.
Well, I'll have to call my friend Lee Sisson that worked for Mr. Bagley for all those years, see how many he's got stored and try to snipe a few from him.
Lee probably does. And I'll tell you, I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but long story short, I actually used to work for Mr. Bagley, Wayne Davis, and Lee Sisson. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, I was an official field tester for Bagley Baits. And how amazing was it as a 10-year-old kid to walk through the factory with Jim Bagley, with Bill Dance, with Lee Sisson, and experience things like that. I'm a Bagley freak, but enough about that. We'll have another conversation about that.
Well, my first pro staff was with Tom Mann.
Isn't that amazing?
I was a Mann's pro staffer, and I caught with Mr. Watts, with Clyde. We fished a lot up here in the late winter, catching big, giant spotted bass, catch a lot of 3.5, 4 pound spotted bass. And he made a little bitty grub called a jelly worm grub. And I wrote in 10-year-old writing to Mr. Tom Mann that I needed more of those because I bought all that the store had and they hadn't replaced them. And lo and behold, a box full of Mann's baits with an application in the whole 9 yards. And I did that for about 15 years after that. So
absolutely
that's
amazing.
Pretty cool.
That is so cool. And I remember that old Stingray grub, that little Mann's grub deal. We were looking at that before the show, actually.
It was a fish catcher then. He'll still catch them.
Absolutely. You know, in all this talk about lures, and I was talking with our producer Andy the other day, and he brought up an amazing point that, you know, we all think that you bass fishing professionals have a secret weapon. Okay, so you're pulling out Excalibur, and now it is time to catch your 5 bass limit. But it is not. I mean, if we're watching all 3 leagues, if we're watching FLW, we're watching BASS, we're watching the Bass Pro Tour, everybody's doing the same damn thing. We see it. It's a rotation of power baits 90% of the time. Obviously, the last
90% of the time, unless you land on one little intricate thing that allows you to be able to fish behind somebody or fish a little deeper. You know, 90% of the time we do a lot of the same things. And what really becomes the main thing is what's right here, right between here, is making decisions. And the better decision makers are the guys that win that week.
Exactly. And just a different, and also there's subtle variations of baits. If you notice, like there's always going to be a Texas rig, there's always going to be a spinnerbait. Like, and there was your variation on your spinnerbait, the subtlety that might make it more palatable between the ears, like you said.
Yeah, it does. And then confidence is the thing that probably gets talked about less. If you're confident about where you are and what you're doing, you're going to be successful. But if you're having that gut feeling, you know, man, I should be 40 miles down the lake and should be doing something totally different, and you run down there and stay 20 minutes and turn around and come back, you don't have that confidence, and you're not going to be. You're trying to get that Hail Mary throw, and that's not going to work. If you stay within yourself and remain calm, you sure do catch a lot more fish, it seems like.
It's amazing. It's so easy to spin out, though, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when you're paying big entry fees and you haven't caught a fish and mama is at home yelling at you because you didn't do the yard when you left and kids have got bloody noses and, oh, yeah, it's pretty easy to spin out. It's a tough way to do it. And, you know, it's a tough way to make a living. Everybody sees the guy at the end of the week holding a $100,000 checkup. Well, I mean, everybody would love to win $100,000, but there's so much energy and effort that goes into this sport that is not seen by the average person. And it's, you know, I've never worked a day in my life, not for the last 29 years, because I love what I do. getting on a plane tomorrow. I'm going to the Wisconsin Fishing Expo in Madison, Wisconsin. Going to be up there hanging out with fishing fans and teaching fishing. But the travel sucks. I hate to travel anymore. I'm gone so much. You know, I'm a single father, losing my wife 5 years ago. You know, my children need me. They're 13 and 14 years old, but I have to provide for them. And this is how I do it. So it's a tough deal. It's a tough gig for a lot of people in a lot of different ways.